youngsters.
Wow. All right, folks, welcome back. You know, this lady's the right lady for you, you know. There's several emotions that we go through in life, and we have to figure out how to deal with all of them. But what happens when these emotions are happening to the kids, to our children, especially the emotion of grief? What do we say? What do we do? Can be very tricky. Some parents, some guardians, we just don't know how to handle it. So here to help us when the situation arises, family therapist, Dr. Sharifa Wilkins Cahoon. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
Thank you for being here with us this morning. We're talking about children and grief. There's a recent case that's been in the news about kids on a compound, some religious issues, and I remember hearing a clip on radio of some of the children and the women being extricated from that compound, and just the screams from the children. I thought to myself, oh my God, this is really a situation. Children have to cope with grief, which we largely equate with adults, but a lot of kids have to go through it as well.
Yes.
Can be easy for them to process.
all.
Yeah. What is the best way, we're going to start high level, to kind of get them through the grieving process? Is it the same as with adults, or is it different, retrofitted for their levels?
Right. So there may be some behavioral differences when you come on to children. You may see some acting out, some violent play, or you may see some children regress to childlike behaviors, especially the younger ones, like they were potty trained and then they start wetting the bed again, or thumb sucking, or some of them develop anxiety or depression. Some of them also has nightmare and just like PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder symptoms, where they have flashbacks, especially in that situation where they may be hearing the screams, seeing flashbacks of whatever took place. And of course, it can be quite traumatic and terrifying for these little children who sometimes don't have the words, the vocabulary to express what it is that they're feeling, what their thoughts are.
And what can some of the triggers be? Death of a loved one, certainly.
Yes, the death of a loved one, the death of a friend, the death of a pet, separation from the parents, migration, divorce issues also. Those could be some of the triggers.
Right.
Even children, sometimes they don't transition well from school, like from primary school to high school. That could also be a trigger as they leave that smaller setting that they're accustomed to in elementary and primary school to go to a larger school setting. So those are some of the triggers that I notice that children
Sim
experience.
mentioned the unfortunate incident in Montego Bay with those youngsters, but there was one a couple of weeks ago where the garbage truck fell on a 7-year-old.
Oh my.
And then the ministry sent counselors
Right.
to the little kids. So you're talking about 6 and 7-year-old. What you tell them? I mean, what you said to them? They lost, even if it's not a friend, they know they lost a schoolmate.
Yeah.
So what you tell a 6 and a 7-year-old when
Well,
something like that happens?
you kind of help them to understand the grief process and the stages of grief, which entails the denial, the shock, can't believe, no, he's not dead, he's coming back. You help them to understand that there may be some anger and help them to process that. They may be angry at God for taking their friend. They may be angry at themselves. They probably sometimes blame themselves. There's some depression where children withdraw, they shut down, they become very silent, very sad, very sulky, begin to cry a lot, very clingy. So, you just help them to process it. Also, some of them may bargain, just wanting their friend to come back. And just help them to get through the acceptance, process, which is the last stage of grief, is very important.
I mentioned the ministry sending counselors. How long does that last? Is it just a one session, a week, or 2 weeks? What do you just go in one day and say, listen, wherever he's with God, whatever, how long would that last?
Well, I cannot speak to that specific situation, but there are times when a group of psychologists may go out and we may conduct group sessions, maybe 3 or 4 times. I do a lot of group therapy grief, and sometimes I may go in for one time for maybe 45 minutes or 2 hours at a time. I allow them to share. But with children as well, as much as group therapy is important, individual therapy is also important, where they would come to someone like me on a weekly basis and process that, whether it's maybe for 3 months to 6 months, however long they need to help them through this process.
Let's talk about death. How do you relay the message, explain the concept of death to a young one? I'm reading in this package that you try not to use phrases like they've passed on or moved on, because that denotes that they may be able to pass back or
Right.
move back. So how do
Yeah.
you speak in definitive terms?
Okay, so children cannot understand euphemisms. So you want to say like, mommy has died or grandma has died. She's not coming back. You want to tell them clearly, because children do not understand the concept of death at this age. When they're very young, they don't know that death is permanent. So you have to tell them, mommy and daddy or whoever has died is not coming back. They're gone into heaven. And you just help them to process that. And sometimes you just create a scenario where they can play and they can draw, or, you know, the sanctuary. I do a lot of sanctuary play therapy with the young ones who are not very verbal, and I give them different toys and tools, and they can express themselves, and they will eventually heal themselves through the process. And I just observe and answer whatever questions they may have. And with children, you want to be very brief in your answer, you know, and be very direct, so they can use, you know, simple language so they can understand.
They tend to have a lot of why questions.
Yeah, they
So you
tend to do.
answer, and then there's a why.
Right.
I think you answer that, and there's another why.
Right. And the truth of the matter is sometimes parents or caregivers are not adequately prepared to deal with that kind of stuff. And then that's when you would, you know, refer them to someone like myself.
Okay.
Right. To help them through the process.
You say in your own practice you've seen an increase in kids who are going through grief.
Yes.
What is that about?
There's just been different scenarios, like parent dying suddenly from, you know, a cancer or a heart attack. There's been a few cases where, you know, there's just accidents, motor vehicle accidents, injuries. Yeah, there's been a lot of that, a lot of increase in that. A lot of increase also in children being separated from their parents due to migration and the ambiguous loss that comes with that, not knowing whether they're going to be reunited with that parent.
That's hard.
And that can be very hard for
Traumatic.
children to process.
Do they recover quickly than us?
Children are very resilient, I can say that. And if given the right intervention and tools, they can recover. But everyone grieves differently. And you cannot put a time limit on how, you know, quickly a person would heal and recover. But definitely communicating a lot, answering their questions as best as possible, and giving them play, tools, so they can.
I understand about
Process.
the time limit, but wouldn't it be bad if 1 year them still in the bad mood, and wouldn't that be?
Of course. I mean, when a situation such as grief happens, it should resolve within 6 months. If it's not
6
resolved within
months?
6 months,
6
yes,
months?
usually.
We can't even get over it in
I
6 months.
know,
We're giving
but
them
I'm saying when clinical symptoms develop, if it persists for over 6 months, then clearly there's some clinical attention that is needed. You know, not every child who loses a friend or a family member may need counseling. You know, but if it persists after 6 months, they may say develop anxiety disorder or clinical depression or something
Depression.
like that.
Well, me don't want to see mine take 6 years.
Yeah. So
It can take a long time, and every child is different.
Is really to keep an eye on your kids.
Yes,
And
be
what
alert.
the signs we have to go over? What are the signs that would show us that we need to consult you if we have kids and we think they're going through grief?
Right. So if you see changes in their behavior, as I said, they become very withdrawn. Let's say they were very outspoken and happy and bubbly, and then all of a sudden they become very withdrawn and sad and clingy. You know, those are signs. If they were doing well in their school and they start regressing academically, you know, as well. Having problems concentrating, poor concentration, nightmares, sleep problems, changes in appetite, eating changes as well.
All right.
So those are some of the changes.
Thanks for coming.
Appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Therapist and
Yeah, and I was just going to say, if you want to talk to Dr. Cahoon, she operates from Howell's Medical Center in Mandeville and also with Family Life Ministries.
here you go, Dr. Sharifa Wilkins Cahoon.
Thank you.
All right, we lighten the mood a little with a cop who is doing more than just serving and protecting. You know why they're called cops?
No, why?
Constable on patrol. So it's actually not a bad thing to say he's a cop. So when the first time I heard that, I thought if I said cop, it would have thumped me, but it's not a bad thing.
I wish he did.
So,
I'll be right back.
you don't.
Okay.